Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. Today we're going to talk about a subject that, while local to the Houston metropolitan area, the Harris County area in Texas, this applies all over the country. I'm with Sam Oser, one of our local reporters here in town, independent reporters, which we know it's where we get the best information. And she has something to discuss here. She wrote an article titled, Falsified Houston Flood Map. Looks like it. This is serious business. This has a lot of implications to people's pocketbooks, to everybody's pocketbook. Sam Oser, welcome aboard. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me to talk about this falsified flood map.
But let me look. We've been talking about this, and we don't think that a lot of people see the severity of what we're looking at here. And it's not, it's not Donald Trump. It's not all these flashy things out there. But it's something that materially affects people a lot more likely than even a Donald Trump re-election. So why don't you tell me a little bit about this entire story?
Right. So when you hear that there's like a falsified flood map in Houston, it's really hard to believe at first, because it's like, all right, well, we have the Harris County flood control, we have FEMA, we have developers, we have all of these instances where it's supposed to check to make sure our maps are correct, and like the floodplain maps are correct. But to just kind of give you some context before going into the map, there's a nonprofit called Residents Against Flooding that formed about 10 years ago in the Memorial City area. They formed specifically because the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone 17, TIRZ 17, was using taxpayer money to develop instead of do flood mitigation. So this is a common thing TIRZs do. We have 27, 30 TIRZs in Houston, and they all do one thing and when they're supposed to be doing another thing. But anyway, so they formed this nonprofit to fight flooding and to fight TIRZ 17. And about 2 years ago, they came across this flood map in Spring Branch. It's in the Pinecrest Golf Course property. And they found it, and they found these maps. And the reason they came across it is because dirt was illegally put in there to raise the 100-year floodplain. So it is 4 feet higher than everything else around it. So it was very noticeable. So they went and found the maps, and the maps didn't look right. So this year they were able to find and hire a hydrologist to confirm their findings. So that's where we are with that right now.
So let me ask you, because that is important. You're saying that they built up an area with dirt 4 feet, supposedly to remove it out of the 100-year floodplain, but everything else around that particular area is within a flood plain, correct?
Yes, yeah, and you're not supposed to manipulate floodplains. So like them putting in the dirt is straight up illegal. Like they're not supposed to. So the property was a golf course, and it was owned by Metro National. Metro National is owned by the Johnsons, and the Johnsons are a powerhouse billionaire family. And they, Metro National owned this property, and they did a letter of map revision.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever they did this, they had their engineers falsify the map with computer analyzations. And then once they had this map, then they were able to sell it to a developer called Emmerman. And Emmerman's the ones that are about to build a 900 house subdivision. So actually, can I share my screen? I can show you.
Absolutely, please do.
Maps. Okay. Here's the flood map. So this is actually a direct overlay. I'm going to kind of give you the high level of what we're seeing here. If you really want to get down into the grittiness with the engineering talk, I did an interview with the former board member of Residents Against Flooding. That's this link over here in the article, and he goes into it a lot. So in this intersection, there's supposed to be some sort of channel or something built to get the water flowing out of the streets. This black dotted line that we see here is what the engineers did for Metro National to show how water would be moved. But this is where it gets tricky. These red dots right here indicate areas of high elevation. So they have water moving through an area of high elevation as if it's not gonna, water doesn't go up.
Right.
Right, so they have it going up over this hill, back down, up over this hill, and then just casually moving through the ponds that were already there. Now, it would make sense if there was something built underneath here, right? But Residents Against Flooding took drone footage of the area, and there's nothing there. There's pictures, there's no indication of anything being built underneath it for the water to be manipulated that way. So the hydrologist that they hired said that it was a gross misrepresentation of reality, and the changes were made to create a non-existent split floodway, which made it appear that the base flood elevation was lowered by 2 feet. This change made it seem that most of the property was no longer in the 100-year floodplain, allowing greatly reduced development restrictions. So then they went in and built it up, and now they're in the process of building up 900 homes in that area.
So let me see if I understand this correctly then. You're saying that they have already been permitted to go ahead and create subdivisions, that they've already started building the subdivisions,
Yep.
and the way they got around this is by elevating the portions that are of what was in the floodplain to give it an artificial reality that somehow this is no longer a floodplain. But there are two things that occur there, right? You spoke about where you drain the water and water going up a hill, but the other thing is by removing that much territory out of a floodplain, it means that you've increased the flooding of everything around what you've. So let's talk a little bit about that and the consequences of that.
Exactly. So in 2017, the Houston Business Journal themselves said Spring Branch is known historically as a blue-collar area with older homes. It is undergoing a major revitalization and redevelopment project because of its proximity to both downtown Houston and the energy corridor. So just that paragraph alone, we're hearing blue-collar. We're hearing it's a poor neighborhood. 2, we're hearing older homes. Again, indication of working class people who live there. And then we're hearing revitalization and redevelopment, but that's PR speak. That's Orwellian for gentrification and flooding out the area around it. And that's inevitably what's going to happen when you build, when your neighbors are being built higher than you, that flood runoff is going towards you. Last night, I actually spoke with Diana Alexander, who ran as a primary candidate
In the city district, in the school district, yes.
Yes, yeah, and she lives in that area, and she was telling me that she has friends around there who are considering moving out because they're seeing all this development happening and they know the floods are going to affect them. But that's the point, right? There's profit in the floodwaters. I keep telling people this over and over. If there's flooding, there is profit for developers. You and I cannot afford to constantly rebuild our homes every time it floods, but the developers can afford to buy up all the property and keep raising it and flushing out the poor people around them. New Orleans is a great example, and different parts of Harris County is a great example. So anyway, Residents Against Flooding took this to the Harris County Flood Control and said, here's the report, here's the hydrologist, please do something about this. They ignored it.
Well, you know, I think most importantly, the way you frame it is what we've got to do. In other words, it is a way to flood people out of their homes and reduce their assets at a discount where developers pick it up and then redevelop it. Gentrification is not, it's more than that. It's actually about further wealth transfer. Your wealth, the wealth of those who least can afford to transfer it to those who already have it. It's a constant story, Sam, and it's a story that I'm very glad that you brought to fruition, because what we have got to do is most of the people in these areas, they don't have a voice.
Right.
And to put it bluntly, and this is not to be condescending or anything in that regards, but they don't read, they see what's happening immediately. Many times they don't understand what the genesis is of their new problem. And I think what you're doing with your article is you're informing them the reason why you will eventually lose your home is because these guys of means are using their political power to allow them to find a way to get you out of there. And you say,
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. And there's no accountability. Harris County Flood Control isn't doing anything about it. So Residents Against Flooding took it up the totem pole even higher and submitted a complaint to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security office. They did it earlier this year, and they were told there was going to be a 6-month backlog. Well, the pandemic started, and now there's a 10-month backlog. But them submitting the complaint does not stop the development process. So while, the U.S. Homeland Office and Harris County, blah, 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 they're like fiddling their thumbs to get to this complaint, this 900 home development on this 4-foot higher thing is still happening. Like they're not being stopped.
and as they developed, water flows. As
Yes.
they develop, water flows. And in that area, we can expect to see further floods. And I imagine that you'll be documenting that as well as we go
Yes,
forward.
I've been, so I really encourage everybody to follow Residents Against Flooding. I don't focus on any one beat in Houston, so it's really hard for me to like zoom in and really focus on a specific issue. Residents Against Flooding have really taken up the flooding issue in Houston and have been fighting it. They are the most organized nonprofit organization that I've seen trying to combat flooding in Houston and the greater Harris County area. So I do encourage you to follow them. I'll be following them for like updates and stuff like that, and then pushing it out to the public as I can, because it's not right.
It is absolutely not right, and it's more than just development. Sir, I'm glad that you put the social aspect in it as well, because I think more than anything else, that is what affects people. Is there something else you'd like to say before we close?
Yes, definitely. So ways that you can help is, one, getting involved with Residents Against Flooding. If flooding is a hot button of yours and you really want to fight against that in Houston and Harris County, follow them, get involved with them. They need a larger network and a larger presence in Houston. Also, call Harris County Flood Control. Tell them about this. Like, why didn't you hold these folks accountable? Apply pressure, send postcards, things like that. And then the last thing, which is really important to do, is to talk about it. Like, I know it doesn't seem like anything, but as you're talking about flooding and hurricane season, just talk about, hey, did you know we have a falsified flood map in Spring Branch? I wonder how many more are out there that we don't know about.
Exactly. Sam Oser, independent reporter in the Houston metropolitan area. Thank you so kindly for having appeared on Politics Done Right. That is some very important work, and we need to have more like you out there. Thank you so kindly.
Thank you very much.
I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly to subscribe to my channel, and please leave me some comments. Thank you very much.